Welcome to the Matt Phillips Podcast. I am Matt Phillips, your sales leadership coach, mental toughness expert, and founder of Matt Phillips Coaching. We help sales managers and leaders make more money, save time, and become kick-ass leaders of their sales teams. And that's what we're here to talk about on this podcast. We are here to give you the tools and tactics to build a well-oiled sales machine and teach you the mental toughness skills so you can show up confident, focused, emotionally in control, and ready to energize your team. It's time to talk sales leadership and mental toughness. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome to today's episode. It is Matt, and we're here today to talk about accountability. And I will tell you, if I had a nickel for every time I heard the word accountability in working with the businesses that I work with day in and day out, I would be retired at this point, because it is the hands down number one buzzword phrase that is on people's minds constantly throughout the day. And I kind of joke when I say this, but I'm so tired of hearing people talk about accountability, right? That, we need to be more accountable to each other, or we need to be more accountable as a company, or we need to be more accountable to each other within our team. And I hear it over and over and over again. And again, I'm joking when I say that, right? Accountability is critical, right? I think you could agree with that, right? If I say I'm going to do something, that the hope is that I actually do that thing. And if you say you're going to do something, I certainly hope that you deliver that thing to me. But I feel like it's become this cliche word now that we just can throw out and use instead of starting to look at it differently, right? What if we took the word accountability out of our language and instead we just placed it with a phrase of, hey, let's set realistic expectations. Let's come together and figure out how we're going to do this. And let's communicate. Let's let each other know where things are at and what's realistic and when I can deliver versus when I can't. And I think sometimes we have to be careful as leaders of constantly using the same words over and over again, right? And accountability is one of them. I think people have almost shut their brains off to it of like, you know what, we need to be more accountable as a team. And everybody's like, yep, I get it. I know it. Instead of shifting perspective on those things. So I want to challenge you all a little bit listening today around this word accountability. And we have to dive into what it means, what we're trying to accomplish through being accountable, and let's just start taking action on the things, right? And communicating a bit differently than we have before. So when I kind of think about this when I'm working with different companies, when I'm just looking at myself, right? Because accountability is just doing what we said we're going to do when you boil it down. But there are a couple key areas that I want to focus on with you that I think are critical that you can communicate to your team and that you can just be aware of as you're approaching your day. But the first is, before we talk about just being accountable of doing anything, I think first of all starts with what priorities am I working on? And having a clear understanding of that. And if I were to ask you right now, like, what are the top 3 priorities that you're focused on that are going to move the needle in your business? How would you answer that question? And with all my clients, we talk constantly about this, like, what are the top 3? What are the top 4 things? Because we can't have 50 things that we're working on. It's like, what are the top things that are going to have a substantial impact on our business? And that's the starting point with everything. Where are we going? Why are we going there? And what are the key priorities that are going to keep me focused on those things? And oftentimes when I meet with leaders and I ask them, what are your priorities? I get this either really long list or something like, I should probably sit down and figure that out. Okay, like I've been there, right? We have lots of stuff going on. And I will tell you that as soon as you gain clarity on what are the things that are going to move you forward, it changes everything, right? It keeps you like crystal clear on what actions you need to take. I mean, we have on our board that we have, or whiteboard in the office that I'm in right now, we have a list of things that are very simple, but we have like 4 things that we're focused on. Now, there's a lot to do underneath those things, right? But those 4 things, we weigh everything against those. So when people ask us to do certain things, I literally turn around and I look at that list. I'm like, is this going to fit? Or when I'm getting distracted, my wife will actually look at me and be like, okay, is it in alignment with the things that we've talked about over and over and over again? And if it's not, then I've got to do something different or shift the timing on it. So the starting point for accountability is clear understanding of my priorities, of what's important, the critical things, not everything. That's the starting point, in my opinion. The second thing is, when I make an ask of someone to go work on something, do something, create something, develop something, it's making the ask, but then having a conversation around like what are realistic expectations for this ask that is occurring right now. And I think oftentimes we set unrealistic expectations or ambiguous expectations. So the unrealistic expectations are it's a Friday morning and we're saying, hey, I need this by Friday afternoon. Now that may be realistic in your mind, right? But a lot of times it's like, okay, hold on a minute. Is this really urgent right now? Does this need to be done by Friday afternoon? Or do we have a little wiggle room in this thing, right? But it's having conversations on like when can the timing actually occur? Or the classic answer, the ambiguity of, hey, this thing's super important. We need to get on it ASAP, right? How many times have you heard that before? Or this needs to be at the top of the list. And I don't know if you're like me, but I don't really know what that means, right? As soon as possible. And you have to understand that when we are ambiguous and we don't have these realistic expectations and communicate around this stuff, that there is a divergence of stories immediately, right? So if you come at me and say, hey, I need this ASAP, or, it's on the top of the list or something like that, I am creating a story in my mind of what that timing is going to look like and when you're going to deliver it. And on the other side, you are thinking something completely different, right? Now, they may be, somewhat close to each other, but they're going to be out of alignment no matter what. So it's setting realistic expectations. What do you require of me? What do I require of you? Here's the timing around it. Here's the realistic view on actually being able to deliver on the thing that we said we're going to do. So based on my priorities and what I have to do and what I have to accomplish, my to-do list, right? When I make the ask, then it's looking at that to-do list, that pros priorities, and saying, when realistically can we get this done? Or what has to shift because of this? There's not enough conversations around those realistic expectations. It's a huge thing if you just spend a little more time. You see, not to get on my soapbox on a different topic, but when we feel like if we sit down and spend a little more time talking about expectations and alignment, things like that, that it's wasting time, that it's taking too much time, when in the end, it actually takes less time up front. So it's like, do you want to do it the right way now, or do you want to pay for it later? Because you're going to have all these follow-up conversations. There's going to be stress and overwhelm and frustration that comes along the way because you have this divergence in stories. It takes way more time if you don't have these conversations than if you actually do up front. Like sometimes I miss that back when I was, in the corporate world, where I threw out those phrases left and right of like, let's do this ASAP. It's got to be top of the list. I mean, this thing is urgent. Again, I thought I was doing the right thing, but at the end of the day, I really didn't know what that meant. I didn't even know I had to define it for people or have this conversation with others. So something for you to think about, like, are you being realistic? Are you asking the right questions? And I'll give you some questions to consider here in a little bit when you're doing that. But again, to go back, first is like knowing your priorities and what you're working on. Second is when you're making the ask, set realistic expectations, have that dialogue. I don't care if it's via email or in person or via Teams or chat or text, or I don't care what it is, but set those expectations. And then the third piece is really, really simple. Communicate. Like if it's going the right direction, maybe say, hey, we're looking good, on track. It's not going well, maybe reach out and say, hey, like I you know what? I'm getting sideways on this a little bit, or something else came up. We need to talk again about this. And often what I find is, and you've experienced this, I'm sure, but the silence, that's like the toughest part to deal with, right? Because again, I've got a story in my head of how you're going to communicate and when it's going to be delivered and what it's going to look like and all this stuff. And even when we set clear expectations, like there's still that like silence is a killer, right? That we're waiting, being like, I said end of day, but did they mean 5 p.m. or did they mean midnight? Like, okay, yeah, we said 5 p.m. and we anticipate and wait instead of just having this open dialogue and communicating. It's really simple when you think about it. And we all know that we should do it. It's just making that decision that I'm going to do it, right? We're going to set this plan in place and we're going to make sure we're communicating, that I'm aware of the other person and that I'm just letting them know where I'm at on the process. It's not giving an update, I've done step 2 of 3 or I'm on 3 of 3 right now, but it's if I'm on track or off. It's just letting people know early and often. Again, this. I just want to remind you to do it. Because again, I found myself certain projects, I was really good at it. And certain projects, I was not really upfront about it. And it was at times when I didn't kind of consider the other person that I got in trouble, because that's when surprises come. So again, when we look at this like word about accountability, we have to start shifting our perspective on it. It's about communicating it's about knowing our priorities. It's about setting realistic expectations. It's about building that communication plan. That's what's going to make you most effective. Now, as far as kind of questions to ask, and there's one final point I want to make on this that is the critical thing that you need to take away from this entire podcast. But when we're setting those expectations, right, we have to be able to ask these bold questions. It's not even bold questions. They're pretty, like, as I say, I'm going to be like, yeah, no, that makes sense. We just have to ask them and be bold with it. But first of all, it's like, hey, this thing's come up. This needs to be done. What is realistic timing to actually get this done? Knowing the deadline. That's one question you can ask. Another question to ask is, what other things do you have going on? What other deadlines, what other priorities that if we add this in are going to shift those? And if they shift, like, what is that going to do to the timing of the other things? What's the downstream impact of some of the decisions that we're about to make here? So it's not just looking at things in an isolated way, but it's saying, hey, let's take a step back for a minute. And, so we only have so much time during the day. And if we have these key priorities, something has to shift. So how do we now start anticipating who else we need to know of what that downstream impact is going to be on them based on the shift we're making here? Another question you can ask is, hey, in this ask, like, what constraints are we not anticipating right now? It's like, what are those things we're not thinking about that, okay, I feel like we're in alignment, but what are we not seeing that we should be seeing right now that is going to derail us? So for example, if you have to wait on some third party or somebody else, even internally, to deliver a piece of information so you can do your calculation, okay, is that going to be a constraint? Can that person deliver? How does that shift their world? How do we kind of look at this stuff? Because again, everything has a downstream impact. And then finally, around communication, everybody, if like, hey, we've set these expectations, all this sort of stuff, the question that you should ask each other is, okay, when should we check back in on this? I know we've set a deadline of this. When should we check back in to make sure things are moving at the appropriate pace? And as a leader, when I ask that of someone that I've made an ask to, what is happening is you are actually getting buy-in from them. They are telling you when to contact them, so that when you contact them, it's not out of the blue. It's not annoying because you've already agreed upon when you're going to reach out. So when I'm making business calls to people, for example, I will ask them and say, hey, let's do a follow-up meeting here. And I will say, awesome. And they'll say, I'll send out an invite in 2 weeks. And my next question is, hey, if I haven't heard from you in a week, let's say, would it be okay with you if I reached out and just made sure that meeting was getting booked? And oftentimes they're like, no, that seems pretty reasonable. If I haven't sent you the invite in a week, reach out. And then guess what happens? Inevitably, they forget because they're busy. And when I reach out a week later, it's not this annoying thing because I start with, hey, remember we talked last time I was going to reach out in a week if I haven't heard from you and seen the meeting invite? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's why I'm calling. Just wanted to make sure it gets on the books. And then they end up sending it right there. But again, setting realistic expectations, like asking when you can follow up with people is amazing. It's about influence, about them giving you permission to reach out again. It's pretty incredible as you look at it. So little tips and tricks that you can use along the way to help get people to be more accountable, even though I'm not a huge fan of that word. Like you can make them deliver on what they said they were going to do, right? Those are just some questions that you can start integrating, and I'm sure you can think of others as well. Here's the last point I want to make, and this part is critical. You hear me talk about this all the time. When we talk about being mentally tough, right? I think, being great leaders, we have to be resilient. We have to have that strong mindset. And the first element that we always talk about, which is critical to this piece, which means that you're mentally tough, it's something you're working on, is confidence. You have to be confident in yourself as a leader to be able to ask these questions, to be able to spend time and going through and identifying those priorities and setting these realistic expectations and building that communication plan. You and the other person or team on the other end, they have to be confident in themselves to ask the questions, build the plan, and to push back on the plan when necessary. This is something that I want to make sure that you are teaching your team, that you are doing yourself, but you're also teaching others, is if we're making asks of each other that are just completely unrealistic, yet we feel that we have to say, oh, yes. There's confidence sometimes in saying no, or there's confidence in saying not yet, or there's confidence in saying that we need to get on a call and find a better way, or we need to get on a call and figure out that because I'm adding this means I have to shift this and build a plan around that. It takes confidence for people on your team to actually discuss those things with you. And as leaders, you can open that door by letting them know that it is okay to reach out and have these conversations. It's okay to reach out and talk about how it's going sideways. It's okay that you push back and we find a realistic deadline for these things. It's about building a plan together. It's about executing. It's about doing the things we said we were going to do. Because once you agree upon something, that's when it becomes frustrating, right? And if your team, or if you don't have the confidence to speak up at that time and just say, hey, I'm going to raise my hand. Now, you may tell me to be quiet and just figure it out. Okay, but I'm going to be bold and raise my hand and say, we need to talk about this because I've thought of downstream impacts that we're not thinking of right now. And we need to discuss if we're going to make this most successful, if we're going to actually accomplish this thing. That's a skill set that you can learn. Like confidence can be built. People don't wake up one day and all of a sudden they're confident. No, confidence is built based on our life circumstances, on what we go through, what we achieve, what we overcome. And your team needs to leverage that when working with you, for example, as a leader. They need to leverage those past experiences where they have spoken up. Again, they're not just complaining to complain. It's complaining with a potential solution, right? Or here's the things we need to figure out. I don't know the right solution, because there's confidence in saying that too, right? But I've thought about it. That's the critical piece, I believe, to accountability. So remember that as you're going through this. Like, do your people have permission to actually speak up and be confident in themselves that they can do that? And you can do that by asking a lot of questions of your team and setting that expectation. That makes sense? All right. So listen, when I say stop telling people to be accountable, obviously I'm joking, right? A little bit, right? I'm being a little sarcastic. And I don't hate the word. I don't think the concept is weird or anything like that. It's a great concept. It's accountability. It's doing what we said we were going to do. And I believe that just the little tips that I wanted to share with you today that I see over and over and over again, I hope are something that you can integrate that will be helpful for you as you grow and develop as a leader and as you sit there and develop a team of leaders. So let's still be accountable. Let's still do those things we said we were going to do. Let's shift our mindset around this concept. All right, you know what to do. You know what to go implement. Go get after it. Have a fabulous rest of the day. And before we close out today, I just want to remind you again, like, leadership is all about knowing thyself and also knowing your team. And so if you have not had a chance to go take our Sales Leader Superpower quiz, it's a key tool to actually start knowing yourself and knowing how you show up, because we can leverage that. And we can also, based on what we send you in this quiz, you can actually learn about others as well. So it's a great tool. It's a really fun, very quick quiz. It's like 60 seconds or less, guaranteed. But go over to mattphillipscoaching.com/quiz, take it, check it out, read your results, and begin implementing that as well. Hope you have a great day. See you on the next podcast. Thank you for joining us today on the Matt Phillips Podcast. If you are like us, we know that you are here to do great things, to become the sales leader that makes things happen and drives big-time sales results. We know you have that big vision, and we are here to help get you where you want to go. We're here to help you develop that unstoppable, rock-solid leadership skill set and help you train to master the one true differentiator: mental toughness. We would love to be part of your journey. So if you are ready, head over to mattphillipscoaching.com and check out the ways that we can help. As always, please share this episode and make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below. Thank you again. And now, go crush the day.